I'd like to call the workshop to order. It is 10:02 a.m. The Texas Government Code permits this Board of Trustees to meet in a closed executive session for the following reasons, among others: to consult with the college district's attorneys on matters deemed privileged by the Texas Disciplinary Rules of Professional Conduct or Government Code 551.071, to deliberate regarding real property under 551.072, a prospective gift under 551.073, certain personnel matters under 551.074, security devices or security audits under 551.076, and economic development negotiations under 551.087. If the board meets in closed session, we will announce the particular section under which we will be doing so prior to initiating the closed portion of the meeting. For the next section of our meeting, we have public comment. I have two gentlemen signed up. They were with us last week. The first one on the list is John Powell of the Timber Oaks HOA. Thank you for being here.
Good morning, board members. As you rightly pointed out, this is a revisit from our meeting last week, and my focus on that occasion was the issue of vehicles and parking issues on Timber Oaks Crossing, which is being mooted as the access point for the new sports complex. Obviously, we have concerns about that, but I have further concerns since the school reconvened that we now have additional parking of student vehicles along Timber Oaks Drive on both sides of Oak Tree Crossing, on both sides of the road, and they are impeding the flow of traffic. Now, yesterday I went in and I saw Roxanne, and spoke to two of the lecturers there, and they did get some of the vehicles moved, but no sooner had those vehicles moved, other students that came park along there. And apparently, I don't know why, they don't use the parking area lot 5, which is the agricultural location there. That is where we'd expect them to park their vehicles. The public street and single access into our subdivision is not the correct place for these people to park their vehicles. Blinn College personnel and the police have been very cooperative in addressing the issue when we've raised it, but I was advised to bring this to your attention. I have copies and photographs. This is a letter from last week, and the photographs that go with them. There's one for each board member and a special one for you, Liz. Oh, thank you. But the parking issue, we're very concerned about going forward with the complex anyway. My concern is current and present. It's because the students, for whatever reasons, I've heard reasons they don't want to buy they don't want to pay for the permits, the parking permits, so they park on the street. It's a public street, I acknowledge that, but it's also a single outlet in and out for that subdivision. It's the only way we have, and we try and discourage people wandering up into the subdivision thinking that there's a shortcut to get to the 290. So when the new construction starts, if it starts, our recommendation would be, please stay off Oak Tree Crossing and look at the original intention, which was South Sager Street as the entrance into the complex, and the location of the complex where it was originally planned to be would be our request and suggestion. We can only see it's going to get worse because with construction traffic, and you've got a lot of construction traffic, if they start using Oak Tree Crossing, we've had 2 accidents there already, we don't want any more. And, you know, it's been a very neighbourly, friendly neighbourhood in our association with Blinn College. Everybody's always been very helpful, very cooperative when we raised issues, and obviously this is getting quite serious. The complex, and my colleague Warren will speak to this, is, you know, it's a real concern for 100% of the residents in that area, should it go. But as I say, my main concern is the road safety now, and what can be done by Blinn College to mitigate that issue that we have. So that's basically where we're at. And again, I've left the letter and the photographs that I took yesterday showing the vehicles parked up and down Oak Tree Crossing. And as I say, we appreciate anything that Blinn College or your police patrol there occasionally, which is good. But we really would like, we'd like some direction and some communication and some input from the board as to the intent. We're a little bit hazy about what your intentions are. Okay, thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Powell. Next up, I would have Warren Schaff. He is also with the Timber Oaks HOA.
Good morning again. Appreciate the opportunity to talk to y'all. Today I want to talk about 3 topics. First is communication. Before last week when I was up here, did y'all know that the proposed location was changed from the approved location that was published in 2021 by your master plan? We only learned about it in June when we requested a meeting with Mark to discuss our concerns. That's when Mark showed us the revised plan. Our question back in June of why it was moved still has not been answered. Communication. We're not feeling like we're being heard since there has been no meaningful communication. Communication is a two-way street. I gave each of you a packet last week detailing most of our concerns. I know y'all are busy. Have you had a chance to look at it? Because the train's moving. The train's left it. It's left the station. Blinn is spending money as of yesterday, punching holes in the ground, doing soil samples. I'm in the business at $5,000 a pop, plus the geotechnical report. You probably spent $50,000 yesterday on something that we're here today. We were here yesterday, here in June, protesting or stating our concern that we don't want this, right? You're spending money on something that we're hoping we're having a dialogue about and possibly moving. Our second topic for today, my second topic today is the health and safety. Let me pose some questions for your reflection. When first responders cannot enter into our neighborhood because there's a soccer game, and our only means of in and out of our neighborhood is this one oak tree crossing, do you want to be the board that approved this relocation in this single entrance and possibly have a house burned down because a fire truck couldn't get in? Or even worse yet, a person die because first responders couldn't get in and out? When you come home from a hard day of work and you're trying to relax, do you want blinding stadium lights shining in your backyard and possibly in your bedroom? Or hearing screaming college kids, rowdy college kids late at night or even on the weekend when you're on your back porch or in your pool trying to relax? Do you want the anxiety of knowing that the house that you just bought is going to depreciate because now there's this big complex in your backyard? The third topic is financial responsibility. Has the board seen a comparison, financial comparison, the pros and cons in between the proposed location and the original location? Our small subdivision is such a peaceful, sweet little neighborhood. I invite you to drive through it and see what travesty this complex would bring to it. Again, 100% of our neighbors signed the petition asking Blinn to move the complex back to the original location and not use Oak Tree Crossing. The city of Brenham is all about community. Please be the board that listens to the community, is compassionate and cares about the community, and acts in our best interest. Appreciate it.
Thank you, Mr. Schaff. Next up on our agenda, we have a presentation of an update on the master plan project Okay, not Dr. Burton, okay. You're good, Mark.
Thank you. Good morning, Chair Benke, members of the board, Chancellor Hensley. I'm here to present an update for our master plan projects, both the Waller project and the sports complex project. Just kind of an overview of what we will be looking at today. We'll be looking at an update on the master plan for the Blinn Waller campus, as well as an update on building number 1 for the Blinn Waller campus. After that, we'll have a short pause for any questions or comments on the Waller campus. Then we'll have a time to talk about the sports complex update here on the Blinn Brenham campus. We've got some visitors here with us from the architecture team and the engineering team that will help us with that presentation. And then towards the end of this presentation, we will talk about the financial outlook and the capital funding forecast update. So to kick us off, I'm going to be giving the presentation for the Waller campus. As a reminder, we bought approximately 100 acres, a little over 100 acres at FM 2920 and Benford Road. Our original forecast project, the forecast scope was approximately 87,000 square foot facility, approximately $68 million with a forecast schedule of FY25 through FY28. You saw from some representatives of Oldham Goodwin all the growth that is coming outside of Cypress down 290 in this area. You were also presented with the regional access with the campus's wonderful access to FM 2920 and Benford Road, the close proximity to 290, and just the good location that we have there. You also heard from Mr. Doug Lowe at FPNC about the growth in the area, that this growth is the highest percentage growth in our entire district. It's growing at more than 4%. And you can also see the 10-mile circle and the 20-mile circle for the drive range for students that we could capture for this campus. Now to get into the 100-acre campus itself, and it struck me in some meetings we were having that it's hard to realize the scale of a 100-acre campus. So I've put a couple slides together just to help us compare, because when you see our building on this campus, it looks like a very small building. So the first comparison I want to show you is an overlay of the Brenham campus. The Brenham campus is about 180 acres. So this is a rough comparison of the size of the Waller campus to the Brenham campus. This is the Bryan campus. The Bryan campus is about 87 acres. So again, a rough comparison in size to that campus. Then we have our Rellis campus, which is 15 acres. I want you to remember that number, 15 acres, for later in the presentation. We could fit almost 7 Rellis campuses on this Waller campus, just to compare size. Then we're going to look at the master plan. You've seen the master plan. The experts were here just a couple months ago talking about that master plan. Just to give you an update on where we are in the progress, Doug Lowe and his team with Facility Programming Consultants is continuing to gather information to turn over to the master planners to help them align the future buildings and the needs that will come on this campus. Kimley Horn, our civil engineer, has continued their conversations with TxDOT on driveway locations and any future needs for right in, right out, or acceleration, deceleration lanes. We have talked with TxDOT extensively about aligning the driveway locations. To give you an idea, the 2 driveways that will be proposed in this first phase are approximately 450 feet apart. That's about a city block apart, so just for scale. In addition, we're also coordinating with the city on utilities to make sure that we are getting the utilities sized and working through where future utilities will go through the campus, because one of our next steps in this process is replatting the site with the city of Waller. Zooming in just our site, and you can see why I wanted to give a sense of scale. This building, this 80,000 square foot building, 82,000 square foot building, looks very small on this site here, but it is a substantial development. You can see there we have put in TxDOT's future plan for FM 2920. You can see the access. There will be an inlet to the center where you can get to the main central drive for campus. And then that drive to the east would be a right in, right out drive. You can also see our detention ponds, retention pond. our retention ponds and detention pond, as well as the city utilities that will be coming along FM 2920 to serve campus. Zooming into just the site plan, you have our main entry drive, which will be the main entry for the long term of this campus. We will have a divided boulevard drive coming to an entry circle. That entry circle will have landscaping, signage, flags for the campus. We also have the western drive, a secondary drive to campus, again, right in, right out only. Long term on FM 2920, of course, right now you could turn in either way. It's not a divided highway yet. Towards the back, we have our service area. This is where we would have service vehicles make deliveries. It's going to be where our chiller yard is. In the front, we have our water feature and our retention pond. We're looking at water fountains and aerators for that right now to give it a nice look. You've seen many of those in the Cypress area. We also have our visitor parking. This will be where visitors to campus, new students, dignitaries will park when they arrive at campus. Then, of course, we've got our student parking and staff parking in the back with a nice collector sidewalk to get everyone to the building safely. We'll put some raised sidewalk in there to help with traffic control as well. Then, of course, our building. This is our 82,000 square foot, 3-story building, and I've got some floor plans of that. One thing I don't highlight here, but I want you to be aware of, the sidewalk to the right will also be a fire lane, so that will also be used for emergency vehicle access. So we will have emergency vehicle access all the way around this building. Moving into the floor plan of this building, so the bottom of your page is FM 2920, and the top of your page is the parking lot. As you would come in, we have a vestibule with 2 sets of double doors that would lead you into a nice grand lobby. Directly in front of you in the lobby would be entryway into a multi-purpose room and an esports arena. You also have the 2 white boxes towards the top. Those are our elevators, our elevator bank. To your right, we have reception desk. That's where we would have maybe a student worker or police officer. We also have open student study space and a study room and a police desk, our police office in that area. Continuing into this wing, this is our student services wing. This would be for enrollment services, prospective students, advising, financial aid. This has great access to the students coming in on the north entry. This area has our disability services, a good placement in the lobby for students in need of those services. It will have a waiting area, several offices, disability testing room, a private testing room. We also have the nursing mother's room in this area and 2 small meeting study rooms for students, and of course the stair on the east end of the building. The centrally located on the north side of the building, we have the entry off of the student and staff parking. We also have the central stair that will get most of the students up and down in the building. We have the stacked restrooms throughout the building. We also have a multi-purpose room. This is very similar to the multi-purpose room in the STEI building to give you a sense of scale. It'll hold about 110 to 150 people depending on configuration. There's also storage support services, a small kitchenette for when food is brought in for events, and an AV control room. We've also been working with Dean Hibbs on the esports area. This is the esports arena, which includes multiple player stations, a competition stage, coach's office, a shoutcast area, console gaming area, and 2 team rooms for the teams to practice and strategize. These areas are also a nice feature. We have covered patios. The second floor will extend over the first floor, so we will have covered patios for students to sit in the shade. We'll have picnic tables and outdoor furniture in these areas. You can also see in the left box, there's a brown square. That is going to be our market. The micro market that we have on the Rellis campus has been doing very well, and with local food choices in the Waller area adjacent to campus, we feel that this will be a good option for students to get a snack while they're on campus, and then they can use that vestibule to get out to the patio and have a snack. We also have our service area in the back. This is where we will have our shipping and receiving, maintenance offices, boiler room, electrical room, academic technology will be located in this area, custodial. Our main MDF room for campus will also be located in this area, as well as the fire pump room. As you move, yes, ma'am.
I want to, okay, with that big room there, I saw the staff restrooms. Where
That's the main restrooms for the whole building.
Okay.
Yes.
I thought I heard staff. I'm sorry. Go right ahead.
Trustee, I think you heard stacked. They're stacked all the way up the building. Yes, ma'am.
So yes, they're all the way up.
I apologize. Thank you.
Moving up to our second floor, and if you would take the elevators off of the second floor, you are let out in the nice large opening for our tower. Of course, we're doing a tower. That's our statement piece. You get let out into that open study space for students. You can see it's open and looks down into that white box. That white box is a two-story opening down into the first floor lobby. We've got some great visuals for that later. We also have 3 student study rooms in that area. And then just to the left of the elevators, you can see some cabinetry, and there will be a copier. There will be student workstations there, print stations for students. Moving to the right wing, we have 8 lecture classrooms. These will be 36 student lecture classrooms. We have 16 in all. These are our typical lecture classrooms, very similar to what we have at the Rellis campus. We also have the stairs to the far right, and of course our central stair. It's going to be open up from the first, second, and then up to the 3rd floor. The stacked restrooms. We also have mechanical space. The relationship of this building, some of the mechanicals on the 1st floor and 3rd floor are served out of this larger mechanical room. We have some building storage, electrical, and IDF closet. This is our library learning center. And I do want to make a comment. Some of these centers, such as the Library Learning Center and the Student Services area, are meant to get the campus going. We envision long-term on the master plan that we will develop a more comprehensive library or more comprehensive student center, student services building. But within this library, we have a service counter for 2 staff members. We've got some computer stations you see in the open area. There's a storage room for the stacks that will be sent from our main libraries to serve the students in that area. A couple consult rooms / offices for the staff that are there. We have some small tutoring rooms, a large tutoring room, as well as a testing room for students who need to take makeup tests, or we can schedule it for them to come in and take some of the standardized testing. Continuing to move on, now we have the lab wing. We have 8 labs in this building. On this floor, we are envisioning a microbiology lab in the bottom right. We also would envision, I think we're showing a geosciences lab in the bottom left, but that may be getting switched to the anatomy and physiology lab. On the top, we have the 2 biology labs, and then in the center, we have their preparatory rooms, very similar to what we've done at the STEI building. Moving up to the 3rd floor, similarly, if you were to come off of the elevators, right in front of you is our open student seating area, study areas in the tower with the 3 study pods. Slightly to the left of that, we have our administrative suite, which again, this would be a suite that long-term that would become a different home for campus administration, and this could be turned into a business office or another use. This suite will have a conference room, reception area. It will have an office for the executive dean and several other flex offices for visiting vice chancellors, deans, or maybe even staff members who would want to call this campus home. You can see in the kind of brown or gray areas, we also have another student study area with cabinetry and a copier in the center. So we're trying to make lots of student open space. Again, we have our 8 lecture classrooms, the stair. We have the central stair that comes up to the 3rd floor, our restrooms. We also have our faculty block. We have 12 double occupancy faculty offices, so we have up to 24 full-time faculty here. We have a workroom. We have a one-touch studio, storage for the faculty. We also have 3 meeting rooms for the faculty to meet with students. There's an adjunct faculty suite, as well as a conference room for faculty and other staff. And then the labs on this last floor, we have our chemistry and organic chemistry towards the bottom of the page. And then we have our physics, and I believe it's shown as the anatomy and physiology, but that most likely will become our geology or geosciences lab on the 3rd floor. Of course, some stairs, and there is a nice, it's actually going to be a very nice student study room there in our student study area in that left-hand side. Now for the pictures. So this is a view from FM 2920. So you can begin to see the water feature, the retention pond in the foreground. For materials, you can see on the lowest level, we're looking at our typical Blinn red brick. On that front left, that's that covered patio in the front of the building where students will be able to go out and sit. In the central area, you can see our nice glass entryway. It's open to 2 stories there, and that top level would be offices. You can see our tower, our trademark tower. That tower is going to be approximately 68 feet tall, and I'll talk a little bit more about that shortly. To the right would be on the first floor. That's our student services area. Above that are the classrooms. You can see we have the white areas. That would be some of the white stone that you would see, very similar to the Rellis campus. We also have some metal panels, the glazing for the classrooms. So I'll show you a night shot of what that would look like. And I was talking about building height. You know, we're a quarter mile to a half mile off of 290 right there, and it's relatively flat. The south side of FM 2920 does have some trees and some power lines and telephone poles there. Those trees are about 30, 35 feet tall. So those trees are about as tall as the trees in this picture. So you can get a vision. The top of that building is about 45, 48 feet tall. The top of that tower is 68 feet tall. It will be very visible from 290. I also want you to remember that number, 68 feet, for later on in the presentation. Here is the entry from the parking lot side. So this is the side you would see as a staff member or student coming into the building. You can see the entry doors there to your left on a covered entry, and you have a nice glass entryway or nice glass visual into that central stair that goes up. The architects have also done a nice night rendering of that. Kind of a similar feel to the tower in front that you get the Blinn logo on that blue wall. Here's a look inside the 2-story lobby, the main entry lobby. You can see the front doors to your left, student seating in the back. We're still working on all the furniture alignment, so that isn't necessarily correct yet. And then you have the esports arena to your right. To the upper area, you have the walkway that would be right in front of the library. Looking the other direction, you could see a logo wall. You can see the student seating area, the reception desk in the back. On the upper floor straight in front of you, you can see that open student study space in the tower element. And then the architects have also done a video. So this is a video. We're going to start in the visitor parking in the front of the building. They're going to walk us up to the front doors of the building. Of course, landscaping is still a placeholder. We need to develop where the flowers go. There could be some planters that happen inside this plaza in front of the building. We're going to come in the front doors, the vestibule of the building. As we come in, the reception will be off to our right. The elevators are in front of us, the entry into the meeting room, the esports area, and then down into more student seating, kind of a student center type space for the building. The architects have also done a walkthrough from the parking lot side. So as we come in from the parking lot, we will enter this nice gathering plaza. We're going to have some benches and landscaping in this area. You'll approach the student side, the staff entry side of the building. We'll come in these doors, go past the stair. The stair is in its own room. It's aside from the entry. It's not in the entry area. There will be lighting. It's a little dark on my video. I'm not sure how it's looking on your television. As you come in, there will be an enrollment services, student services counter in front of you with a seating area for prospective students. There were the stairs and some kiosks for students. That desk there on the left is still getting worked out, but the reception desk will be here. The elevators are to our right. To our left would have been a student study area, and we're back to the main lobby of the building. So with all those floor plans and pictures, the question is now, where do we sit on scope, budget, and schedule? And as I mentioned before, we needed to get our architects involved to do programming, get our construction manager involved to help us with budgeting. The architects have verified budget. And so I'm pleased to tell you that after going through that process with the architects, we are at an approximately 82,000 square foot, 3-story building. We found some efficiencies. We are on, currently our estimate is still on budget at $68 million. They have factored in some escalation in there. Of course, there's always the geopolitical environment that could throw wrinkles in things, but we are tracking on budget. And we are also tracking on schedule with that FY25 through FY28 schedule. And I believe later on in the presentation, Dr. Burton is going to share with you a little bit more detail on the upcoming events in that schedule. So with that, I will pause for any questions on our Waller project.
Was the building always 82,000 square feet?
It was originally estimated at about 87,000 square feet. In looking at it, we right-sized a few areas, knowing that long-term, the home for student services would not be in this building, so we right-sized that a little bit. We also decided, after looking at the food options in the area, that a bistro or a kitchen was not necessary, that we could take advantage of that amount of money and help to hold our budget. So we right-sized it.
The price of the project stayed the same, but we lost some square footage.
We did lose a little bit of square footage, yes, sir.
I've got several, if I'm next, or anybody else can go. Mark has a good presentation, excuse me. And I want to give kind of my overall global view of this project and stuff. I certainly supported the land purchase, and I support the master plan. I think that was very well laid out. I think you've accommodated a campus there, and even provided some property we can sell off of Benford in the future to help maybe pay for some of this. So I think that's a very good layout. I do have some questions about what you showed. You'd mentioned, what is the student capacity that you showed?
The total student capacity is about 2,500 to 2,700 students.
With that existing classroom space that you're showing there?
Yes, yes, sir.
And you'd mentioned also in your presentation that you were going to come back to a 68-foot height deal. I'm not sure what you were alluding to
It's
there.
got something to do later in a future, in the sports complex
It's still a
presentation.
surprise, okay.
Sorry.
Well, on the height requirement, then, does the city of Waller have the?
No, sir. No, we've spoken particularly to them about their height, and they aren't
So they can't put a
concerned.
fire out if we have they do not have the capability?
No, we've spoken to them. They don't have a concern about that height.
They don't have a concern, okay.
No.
And that requires certain fire,
Yes,
apparatuses to
and
build,
we've-
to do that. I'm
Yes, sir.
surprised that they have that ability. Going back to, but again, I liked what you showed. What I don't like, and that's not pointed at you, is the pace of this project. I don't support going forward right now with the $68 million number and building an 82,000 square foot building. I don't know where we're at on this lease space. I don't know if that's a part of our presentation today or not, but I think an update of that is warranted as well, to know where we're at on that. I feel like I would like a much slower pace and something that would establish some presence in Waller with our existing committed expenditures through this lease space building before we commit to building a $68 million, 82,000 square foot new facility. So really what mine comes back to is our pace and the amount of debt that we're going to incur. And I'm sure that'll be the topic 3, is that we're going to talk about the debt. And I don't know how we can afford to go into another bond issue. And anyway, we'll talk about that when we get to the debt part. So
Yes, sir.
I support what you've got, where we're at. I don't support the pace we're going. And I would like to have further discussion on that. Thank you.
I've got a few comments or questions, Mark.
Yes, ma'am.
Going back to TxDOT, is the 2920 widening, is that on the project schedule already? And will that be occurring at the same time that we would be building? Do we have all that coordinated? I just saw those 2 access points on 2920. If we had developed the one on the other side, I mean, I'm just trying to get a feel for this.
I didn't intend for Kimley Horn to maybe talk about this, but Chris, do you have anything you might be able to talk about the TxDOT schedule for FM 2920?
Yeah, we have coordinated with TxDOT on the driveway locations. 2920 is in design. I don't believe TxDOT has set a let date for it, which is when they would bid the project out to go to construction. If I was making an uneducated guess about it, I would say they're probably a couple years down the road before they're ready to go to bidding, and then you'd have a couple years of construction after that. So until they establish that letting date, we really don't have a solid on when we would see that completed. The way we're handling that in the design right now is planning our access locations to match their future design, but knowing as we look at traffic, it would be in the current condition when we open on 2920, and then that construction would start occurring, is what we're assuming.
So in other words, we think we will have our building completed, be using those access points. Then at some time thereafter, those two access points will be shut down. And
They would still, I mean, there would be a requirement that they're going to have to maintain access into the campus through those two access points, but at some point, those driveways would get reconstructed in the right-of-way for connections onto the ultimate, yes.
so we would, that would involve another cash outlay for
That would
the
be on,
additional.
that would be on TxDOT. So we would.
Okay.
We would construct, my current thought is we would construct our permanent concrete drive up to the right-of-way line, and then an asphalt drive to match the current asphalt street. And then when TxDOT comes through, they're responsible to reconnect up to their property line. So they would reconstruct a concrete drive back up to your property to match.
But during construction, can you get into Blinn? In other words,
Yeah,
a lot of times
they will-
close lanes off and things like that.
They will have to maintain access to a minimum of one of those driveways at all times. And typically, they'll do it where they maintain it until they're working right in front of your site, and then they'll close one, and then they'll move to the next one, and close the next one, and then continue their construction on. So they cannot eliminate access to properties during construction, so.
We may just need to look at that if we have an emergency, that type of thing, making sure, depending on how many students are on campus, if we needed a back gravel road or whatever. But I'm just thinking about that for situations. Thank you so much.
Trustee Wells? Nothing further?
May I ask another question?
Yes,
On the
ma'am.
academic building, I'm guessing that there's a consortium of a number of Blinn people on that. Do we have we've got facilities, the academic people, health people, who's got input into all of that before we see it?
Oh, yes, ma'am. No, we have regular meetings weekly. Dean Max Hibbs is part of those meetings. Certainly our facilities group are part of those meetings. The academic technologies group is part of those meetings. And then we'll have special breakout meetings to talk with Dr. Godney on the sciences. We've had meetings with the student services groups, with library learning center folks. We've met with Dr. Busicki and spoken with him on the academic areas. We've talked with a number of groups on this project, all the major areas. We've also, in talking with student services, there was talk about the meeting rooms. When we were looking at food service, clearly food service was part of the conversation. We've engaged all the necessary departments in the college.
Good to know. Can I ask you one more question?
Yes, ma'am.
Please. On the retention ponds, those ponds would be, at some point when the whole campus is developed, I can see all of the water draining into there. Will those retention ponds be filled, or do we have to pump those full of water initially? How does the water get in there? And I'm thinking of cost is what I'm thinking about, maintaining those, because a 1 acre plot takes 28,000 gallons to fill it 1 inch, and it evaporates at a 1/4 inch per day in the heat of the summer. And so we're talking about $800,000. I don't know how big the retention ponds are, but it takes a significant amount of water to keep those full, and they have to be properly engineered to look beautiful. So I just want to make sure that we keep those costs in mind when we're developing those, because we will need extra money. I don't think we have that. I mean, maintenance type of a thing. Just want to keep that in mind so that we can keep those nice and beautiful. And, we don't want we don't want oily water in there. In other words, your watershed from your parking, if that goes in there, you want beautiful water in there. So that all has a cost. I just want to make sure that we take a look at that maintenance side of it It's something, we probably have.
I'll start and let you kind of get into some of the detail. And Chris, I might steal some of Chris's thunder. One of the aspects, and again, correct me if I'm wrong, is that the area we're at in Harris County requires us to have wet detention or wet retention ponds. Am I correct in that?
Well, it is very typical in that area to have wet retention ponds, mostly because of topography. It's just so flat that to have the volume, you end up with wet ponds.
Okay. So,
I don't know if y'all through answering Diane's question,
Well,
but if I can, go ahead, Chris.
So to kind of elaborate on how the site is draining currently, the site really drains from the back of the property towards 2920 today. So as we're grading these ponds, a couple of things happen. One, we end up with a lot of excess dirt that we're going to need for future buildings, and so there's grading happening on the site well beyond the footprint of this one building and parking. In that process, a lot of the undisturbed area that is north and to the east of the first phase building gets directed into these ponds as just natural sheet flow, grass-covered areas that will sheet flow into the center pond. The three ponds are all interconnected, so they will equal in level. So one's not going to be full and one of them ends up lower than the other. They're all going to equalize out. As we are designing the storm system around the building and the parking lot, partly because we're early in the development of the campus, those storm systems, some of them are discharging into grass-lined swales before they discharge in. So you would see areas where storm pipes would discharge into a swale, maybe get picked up, go under a driveway, and discharge back into the pond. But most of them are not direct from parking areas straight into the ponds, things like that, for the reasons that you mentioned of just water quality in the ponds, things like that.
In other words, there's natural filtration
Correct.
occurring in the process,
Right.
and we'll keep that in mind throughout.
And then the other component to that is really more on the landscape architecture side of the aeration of the pond through fountains and things like that is what helps maintain the water quality from keeping algae out and things like that, is just having that circulation in the pond and aeration in the ponds. We'll keep that in check.
Thank you.
Yep.
Did you have something, Trustee O'Malley? Okay.
I did have one. It may be
Go
part
right
of the
ahead.
mystery presentation. You also said you were going to come back to the 15, so.
next presentation,
Okay.
sir.
I can tell a lot of time and effort has gone into that with a lot of collaboration between many different departments, and we appreciate what you're showing us. Thank you very much.
Thank you. All right, if everyone is ready, we'll move on to the sports complex. And so now we'll move to our Brenham campus, our sports complex update. And I did invite a couple representatives from Pfluger. They are our architects for this project, as well as some representatives from Kimley Horn. We have Chris Lammers with Pfluger Architects. He leads their higher education area. He was also a college athlete himself and had some children who were college athletes. He is their athletic specialist. We also have Chris Lack. He is also a leader in their higher education area, and he's our project manager for the project. We've got Chris Harris with Kimley Horn. He leads the civil engineering side for the team. And then we also have Mr. Ryan Urich. He is their transportation engineer. He's going to give you an update on traffic and transportation for the study that they've performed on this complex. So again, just bringing the board back and reminding us of the start of this. We have the original master plan developed in 2021, which showed an athletics complex on the acreage that we owned at the time. That was, about 30 acres of land. Of course, we know some of the issues with that land could have been the floodplain and the creek there towards the right. We had always shown access off of the Circle Drive, and then potentially the access going down to Apple Way. We had the building, the fields, of course, the Rankin Ag Complex to the north, the cemeteries to the east and the south. And then the land that we did not own to the west of us here. Shortly after the master plan was developed, the college had the opportunity to buy the acreage, the 24 acres, just to the west of us. which has access to the circular drive at Timber Oaks Crossing, or Oak Tree Crossing, and then also has that direct access to Apple Way and the right-of-way on the south side of the property. Going back to the proposed master plan project, the forecast project that we presented back in November of last year, what we presented for this new complex, and this is where in November of 2024 it was presented at a public meeting, we proposed a new complex which would include a practice football field, a competition soccer field, a competition softball field, approximately 29,000 square foot field house that would have the sports offices, locker rooms, training facilities, include 115 new parking spaces, 2,500 square foot unconditioned field storage building, new road connection, and also include extensions of the site infrastructure and utilities. And at that time, we were envisioning connecting to the roadway to the north. And the site layout was just more of a test fit, a space plan as you would, and we needed the architects clearly to master plan the site, give us a vision for what we could and should do, orient the fields properly, and then of course assess our forecast budget and our forecast schedule and tell us what that projects to based on the planning and the design. Since that time, we've engaged Pfluger and their team, as well as Bartlett Koch and the construction managers to help us through this process. And I'm going to walk the group through from kind of a larger picture down to on the site of a few areas before I turn it over to the team to talk about their specific areas. But just to give us a vision of this area around campus, I'm going to start off with some of the roadways. To the south of campus, we have Apple Drive. That is the driveway coming off of the frontage road, just south of Apple Ford. We also have US 290, getting TxDOT into the mix again. There's some plans there that we're going to talk about in this presentation. To the north of everything, we have Old Mill Creek Road. We'll be talking about Old Mill Creek and the thoroughfare plan. We also have Oak Tree Crossing Drive, which is a proposed entry point for this sports complex. We also have Sager Street, which is the north-south near Mill Creek Hall and heads north into town and provides access into our apartments. As far as neighbors to the south of this property, this is owned by the Brenham Cemetery Association. They have the large vacant field just south of the complex across the roadway right-of-way. To the west of us, we have the commercial area with the Hyundai dealership, the Ford dealership, some open land, also the Dodge dealership and a furnishing store. We have the subdivision, the Timber Oaks subdivision to our north. We also have the Lutheran Church to our north. Coming onto our campus, this is the Rankin Ag Complex, as well as the Ann Gardner Livestock Annex and their associated pasture. And just to give the group an update, we've also engaged them in this discussion. As we're looking at master planning this land, we've talked with them about their future needs, not only here at the Ann Gardner Livestock Annex, but their future plans even at the Kelm Ranch for long term. And so we're going to show you a little bit of what we've heard from the agricultural group on what their future needs are. Continuing on in this area, we have our Blinn College Park Apartments where a number of our student athletes live. We also have Mill Creek Hall. We have a number of student athletes that live there. And then in a similar avenue, we have our Cruzy Center, which is kind of a mixed-use type facility like we're proposing for the sports complex, where we have general students use this facility or athletes use this facility. It's also home for our intramurals. And then across the street from Cruzy, we have Leroy Dreyer Field and its overflow parking. And then we'll also talk a little later about the band practice field and the intramural field. So intramurals and bands share this field right now, and there's some exciting things that we can do to free up that field with this new sports complex. So now we're going to dig in on the site a little bit more. We're going to talk about the overall of the site, some of the constraints, and some of the factors that we're looking at. Of course, we have an access point off of Oak Tree Crossing, off of the circular drive, and we'll address more about that in our traffic impact analysis. There's also an access point on Apple Way. We have access there. There is an existing detention pond that is the detention for the Ag Complex and the Ann Gardner Complex. We intend to expand that detention. It's necessary that we add some detention for all of our development, so we can expand that. And of course, we have the Ann Gardner Livestock Annex and their pasture that they currently use, which extends basically from the south side of the building down into kind of a low-lying drainage area and extends over to basically to the creek in that area at the creek. And then, of course, we have Higgins Branch Creek in this area, the floodplain. It does drop off fairly significantly as you get towards the creek. And of course, we have the floodplain issues that we would need to be aware of in that area. It's very densely vegetated, not that that would be a development issue when we got to that. Cutting through the middle of our property, we also have some overhead power lines. When we started talking about this project, one of our first calls was to the city to talk about our options for these power lines. We've had very good communications with the city in regard to these overhead power lines and our ability to either build around them or move them. And the city's helped us put a plan together to reroute these power lines, put them underground, and open up our site so that they don't encumber our site. Additionally, in talking about the site, you can begin to see some of the contour lines, these very light lines you might see that kind of cut through. We've known we have a bit of a hill, but it wasn't until we received the survey from our surveyor that we got to really dig in on what type of a hill we have. So we've done just kind of a very brief analysis, and again, our architects, our engineers, the contractors have really looked at this site because this is a big driving factor of our development. This is a 52-acre site that we have available for development, so about half the size of the Waller campus. And this sports complex, for what we need for the fields, for the building, for the parking lot, we need 15 acres for that. So that's roughly the size of our Rellis campus we need to develop on this hill, on this 50-acre plot of land. So as we look at the topography, just to kind of break it down, from the west side, behind the car dealerships, to the east side, not down into the creek, but into the area that we could develop, it slopes off 50 feet. From Apple Drive to the low point of the site, again, just behind the ag pasture, it slopes off 65 feet. That's almost the size of the tower at the Waller building. And then in this direction, this is our 30-foot slope. So from the south towards the north, it's sloping down by 30 feet. That's our least slope on this site for the development that we're looking at. To give you an example of what that looks like, and again, because of the length of the site, we've had to shorten this a little bit, but just to give you a visual of the height, the building you see on the left, that's equivalent to the height of our 2-story Blinn College Park apartments. Their roof peak is about 27 feet, so our hill, our shortest direction in the hill, is about 30 feet tall. So we are working with a significant hill no matter where we go on this site. And we're trying to put some flat fields and relatively flat parking in a building in that sloping hill. I'm going to shift gears a little bit from the site to the use of the site. We talked about earlier, who have we engaged, how have we talked to them. We've had a lot of engagement with the athletics group, we've had a lot of engagement with the intramurals group, talked with them about their usage, their needs. I know this is very small and hard to read. We can get you a copy if you want to read through it all, but we really dove in on what the size of their teams are, when their competition seasons are, when their practices occur, where do their students live. If they were to come out to this side of campus, how might they get there? Do they walk? Do they carpool? Do their students typically have cars? A lot of in-depth investigation into all the athletics programs that will come out here. Some of these teams live at Blinn College Park Apartments, and we would expect some of these students to be able to just walk over to the complex. We've also looked at their competition seasons. So to lay this out, we have two competitive areas. We have the soccer complex and we have the softball. So soccer's competitive season is in the fall. So men's and women's soccer competes in the fall. In the spring, they have some exhibitions events, but it's very lightly scheduled events. Women's softball will have a few games in the fall, but that's not their competitive season. You can also notice that the soccer teams generally are playing on the weekends and the evenings, when we won't have as many students going to class at the ag complex. There are a couple day games, but that's a simple scheduling issue if we wanted to have them to more evening and weekend games. When you begin looking at the spring schedule for softball, you can see softball likes to play a lot of doubleheader games. And talking with Coach Church, his feeling is that the lighting at Holt Park is insufficient for him to play night games. He's concerned about his player safety. They only have 4 lights at Holt Park. The typical would be for them to have 6 lights. So he is concerned about playing night games. We look to resolve that in our design so that he can begin playing early evening into the evening and have some night games at his softball field. You can also see that women's soccer and men's soccer really don't compete in the fall. They have very limited events. In the spring. We've also talked with Intramurals. Intramurals is excited about this opportunity. They will be able to use this complex outside of the times when the athletics groups are. You heard earlier that Intramurals is sharing a field with the band. They don't get to use that in the fall because the band, for their performances and their practices, puts things out in the field and they can't disturb those. So they're very excited about being able to expand intramurals into the fall. Things like kickball, softball, flag football, soccer, ultimate frisbee, wiffle ball. They generally start off in the evenings around 6, and they can wrap things up, at 9, maybe 9:30, or earlier if need be. I'm going to go ahead now and turn it over to our friends from Kimley Horn. Ryan Yerk's going to come up. That data that I just talked about was some of the data that we turned over to them to help them develop their traffic impact analysis. So I'm going to let Ryan walk you through the traffic impact analysis.
Thank you very much for having us here today and allowing us to talk a little bit more about this. I'm going to start a little bit higher level, and then I'm going to get down into a little bit of the weeds on the, hopefully it's not too much of the getting to the nuts and bolts, but I think it's important to talk about both the flow regionally as well as when we get closer to the site itself. What we're showing here is an excerpt out of the 2018 Brenham Thoroughfare Plan. I bring this up just to show a little bit of history on the site. You notice Sager Street on kind of more centrally located. I was told I could find a way to point on this. Excellent. So with Sager Street coming in north-south, you notice the connection down to Prairie Lee and further south. That connection had since been taken away. This was a major collector proposed for Sager Street north-south through here. You can see Apple was a minor collector, around a little bit something more centrally located. Old Mill Creek also shown as a minor collector going over to Sager at that point. Looking at the most recent 2023 Thoroughfare Plan map, just showing this here for context, but I'm going to dive in a little bit closer to we can see a little bit better. Here you can see that connection, I believe in 2019, between Sager going down to Prairie Lee was actually removed. I think there was various related items with that right-of-way and the cemetery, but ultimately that was removed. So as we're talking about this traffic study, we're also going to be talking a little bit about the thoroughfare planning and some requests we may be making of the city of Brenham. So we had also overlaid, this was not part of the thoroughfare plan, but we overlaid for context some of the road names and the sports complex itself, the general location. As Mark had mentioned, the land to the south of this proposed thoroughfare plan on the map itself was associated with the cemetery. And really the only things in that area other than, we have the single family to the north, but as far as what this road would serve would really just be the cemetery site as well as the sports complex if it was to remain. So as we again, that's just kind of higher level. I'm going to come back to that a little bit later. As Mark alluded, this is the TxDOT project coming through. This is the US 290 at State Highway 36 interchange project. A couple of things, and whether you're aware of it or not, I'll go through a little bit of the details for education purposes. It'll be a direct connector. This is a very, very busy interchange, as you all may know. So it's going to provide some of those direct connectors, but it's also going to provide reconstruction of Old Mill Creek bridges, and it's going to provide those one-way frontage road conversions to make Old Mill Creek a much more feasible north-south connection from the north. And so as we're talking about site flow, the one-way conversion of the frontage roads will be an important aspect.
So in other words, right now, Mill Creek, when you exit on 290, you either go right or left at Mill Creek.
That's right.
They extend that straight. In other words, you could, I don't know, one way, get up here, you could go left, right, or straight back.
That's right. And it's twofold, because you're going to not only have the northbound access on the eastern side of 290, well, 290 being east-west relatively, but let's say Planview North here, you'll be able to continue on a northbound frontage road on the eastern side of the freeway, and that conversion of two-way to one-way, that western side would be a southbound one-way frontage road coming south. If you've driven on 290, of course, there's these intermediate access points, very atypical of a highway that would be more limited access. And so you have proper on-ramps, off-ramps. The current flow with the two-way, it has its challenges from a safety perspective. So this is all things that are outside of our, it's already in motion from TxDOT's perspective. The latest I've heard, and don't quote me on this exactly because TxDOT can be flexible, but 2018 potentially, 2028 starting, I'm stuck on the old thoroughfare plans. 2028 potentially starting construction there on that. So, and that might be a 2 to 3, 4 year timeline for construction. So it's in the future. Just want to make sure that we're aware that that's one aspect of the project and impacts on it. Diving a little bit closer into diving a little bit more into the flows related to the sports complex. We're looking at this on a perspective of north-south connectivity. So connection up to Old Mill Creek to the north was the most direct connection to the future plan, but also to the existing access as far as being able to get to 290 with the two-way frontage roads. And in the future, they'll have the ability to go north-south very easily with those extensions. Any access to Apple Drive, while it was still a consideration we were looking at, and thinking about who would actually be using Apple Drive. If you're coming to Apple Drive in the future, anybody coming off of 290 or coming from 36 going westbound, you may have some access there to access the site. However, coming back, if you're on the site itself and you're talking about egress, I think that's one of the big primary concerns is how are we getting people out of the site without impacting residents, impacting the neighbors. Coming to the south and with that future configuration, you're going to be coming right back to the north to come to the same point to where a more direct access point to Old Mill Creek would be coming up and accessing that interchange at that point. So as we're talking about site flow, we did do a sensitivity analysis of, hey, what if we looked at 2 access points versus 1 access point? And that's kind of the first on the left-hand side. That's our weekday. This is the typical, the points that Mark had made about the various groups coming for various practices during the week. The trip generation we're talking about in the morning, we had expected, about 30 people to come to the site with a vehicle. That would be coming in and going out, and so we get a total of 60 trips for that peak hour. For the PM, maybe a little bit higher. We're showing a total of 100 trips. That'd be 50 people coming to the site, maybe filling up half the lot. And this is a more conservative estimate based on the information that we have from the athletic department. And looking at that, again, we wanted to have that sensitivity analysis to really understand any kind of concerns related to traffic flow. And on the basis of trips, what we found in these 2 scenarios is that there really isn't, as you'll see with the numbers here in a second, there really wasn't a lot of difference in increase in delay and being able to get out in a smooth, safe, and efficient manner. We took it a step further and we said, all right, what about game day? And what can we really expect here? And we took a conservative approach here with the stadium, the soccer stand capacity with about 600 seats. We said if people are arriving maybe 1.5 persons per vehicle, you're looking roughly 400 vehicles coming to the site. We mentioned earlier there's only 115 spaces that are allocated on the parking lot on site. So we're utilizing the other parking areas that are already constructed, already built, that have walkable paths within a half a mile of the stadium, or of the sports complex. And they have that a quarter mile is reasonable, especially for more able college students. Half a mile is not unreasonable at all, especially if they already have a permit to park at the apartments, or park at the lot to the east, or to park at the ag complex. And so the advantage of those game day scenarios is that we're really looking at a max of 115 vehicles that can come in and out of Old Mill Crossing there. So, of Oak Tree Crossing. The others would be attached to those other access points. And so we've represented kind of a pre-event scenario and a post-event scenario. Everyone coming in at one time, everybody leaving at another time. In talking about level of service, again, for the sake of getting into the weeds, level of service is like a grade in school. Typically for traffic, when we're talking about intersection capacity, for unsignalized, it's about the delay that you're going to experience as a driver. If you have to sit at a stop sign for 10 seconds waiting for a gap, you're still at level of service A. If you're waiting a little bit longer, maybe you're waiting 20 seconds. Well, now you're level of service C, because now you're getting a little anxious, and maybe you're starting to, again, kind of grades in school. When we're talking about it from a traffic engineering perspective on the basis of trips alone, level of service C and D still relatively reasonable. E, you're starting to get that threshold where people are accepting gaps that maybe from a safety side, may be a little bit less acceptable. Level of service F, you're gridlock, you're sitting through multiple cycles, you're waiting more than a couple minutes at a stop sign, waiting for the gaps along major thoroughfares to go. And so I want to put that in perspective on when we start talking about the levels of service, that there's multiple grades for how we're working on. Hard to read on this, and again, we have ultimately a full TI report that we could share ultimately. What we see here between the various scenarios, though, is that existing conditions, as far as the volumes along Old Mill Creek Road, they're not substantially high enough to not have those gaps. It's a relatively lower volume road. The volumes we have coming out of the site on a weekday basis, and even on a game day basis, we're talking about 100 trips flushing out over the period of an hour, a couple trips a minute. And so when we think about it from that perspective, the level of service A that you see in existing conditions carries through to those various other conditions, but whether it's one access point, two access points, level of service A throughout. As traffic volumes increase, there's strategies we can look at if that roadway does increase in volume. But right now, as far as this includes some background growth projections, a little bit per year compounded. So we're trying to take that kind of conservative approach when we were looking at the analysis. This is for the PM itself, kind of zoomed in for you. And again, we're talking about a few seconds of delay increase when we're talking about the adding of the sports complex. This was for the pre and post event. We start to get into some of those level of service B. Again, that's a short burn. Pre-event, post-event. Post-event, we can expect people to egress, especially with only having 115 spaces, egress well within an hour. Sometimes people mill about afterwards, and so that's a little bit more spread out, but a couple cars a minute is what we would expect. Then we got into looking at the intersection connection itself. Right now, it's kind of operating as a roundabout. I'd call it a traffic circle. There's proper industry standards for signage and striping that we would typically have with a roundabout to promote safety and to promote any kind of heavier vehicles. And when I say heavier vehicles, if you have moving vehicles coming to the single family, if you have if you have deliveries, whatever you may have. Truck aprons are not uncommon. It's a fairly wide, single-lane roundabout, but we would look into, as we got into design, considerations for truck aprons. Currently, there's mailboxes in the center of that. If we're really talking about the best placement of something like that, it would interrupt flow if someone was parked there to get their mail. We would work with USPS and the neighborhood to find an ideal location for the mailbox. We put some enhanced signing and striping. Another aspect you see here, a little faint in the yellow, is to provide that pedestrian link. And I think the multimodal aspect of this is there's going to be people walking, there's going to be people taking buses. So some of these assumptions we've made may be less conservative. When we're talking about stadium capacities, when we're talking about parking needed for state or sports complexes, the city has 1-to-4 ratio. So for the 600, or even looking at the 600 plus the 400, 250 spaces would be provided. Again, those were a little bit offset. We're showing 400 by comparison. So we're trying to look at that from a conservative approach to really make sure we're honing in on the best solutions. So that pedestrian aspect of being able to connect the ag complex down to the sports complex parking, really having that clear path, having it be attractive for people to park here, and this I think was roughly a little over 200 spaces in this parking area, and so again utilize some of the space around the apartments to walk to and from the complex. I think that as we got into some of the discussions on the thoroughfare planning, one aspect we would propose to the city is that with this now no longer having that north-south connection down to Prairie Lee, there's really not a need to build out a collector street to that capacity. I mean, the one that they currently show with 80 foot in that thoroughfare plan, that would be like 2 lanes each direction with 2 lanes of lane of parking on either side. Just really not something that's we feel is needed, and it really is going to just contribute to more cut-through traffic through this area, where we're just having this as more of an attraction spot for the Blinn students. So, thank you.
Thank you, Ryan.
Are we saving our questions for the end? Is that?
If you have a question, I think it would be appropriate to ask while he's going over it. Is that okay with you?
Yes, ma'am.
Go right ahead.
Thank you. Ryan, correct?
Correct.
Did you look at any Sager Street options at all?
Oh, I know. Well, maybe I'll speak to.
We looked at the Sager intersection, correct?
We looked at, as far as analysis is concerned, we did look at Sager Street at Old Mill Crossing, or Old Mill Creek. We looked at each of the driveway locations for that. But as far as a connection directly to the complex, that
has not been looked at yet. Some of the parking lots that you're suggesting that be accounted for in this proposed plan, have those been previously accounted for in other ag or other dorm or related facilities on the college campus?
I will say that where there was already where we were accounting for occupancy of those spaces already, for instance, the apartments, we only showed a relatively smaller availability of those and utilized some of the other ones.
Have they been previously committed to other buildings though in the past?
Not to my
I can
understanding.
speak to that. So certainly, Mr. O'Malley, you're aware of the history of our parking lots and the history we have with the city. So while yes, there are parking that is allocated to the campus, we continually have conversations with the city about overall parking capacity and the total student capacity of the campus. So we have had a preliminary meeting with the city and talked about the scheduling of this campus and talked about parking capacity. And at this time, we have not heard any comment from the city that they have concern over our parking capacity.
They've signed off.
They have not signed off officially. We have not submitted an official document to the city, but we have had the pre-development meeting.
Okay. Ryan, another item that I had was on the TIA, where you had the number of trips and you looked at the 400 and the 300 and the 100 per day. And I think all that was based on the schedule of use, correct?
That's correct.
Is that schedule of use going to be something that this board has to adopt forever? Are future administrations and coaches going to have to abide by that same schedule to meet that design criteria? That aren't even here yet, are employed by the college?
There's always going to be some flexibility. These are planning level studies, so I think there is some flexibility on scheduling. This is just kind of the typical trips, and again, we try to take a conservative approach there to cover that flexibility.
I'm just
that you may
wondering if,
have
in
within
the
that.
future, 10 years from now, when maybe this room might look a little different than it does today, if those coaches and that administration is committed to what we've designed around today from how we plan to use our fields. Is that not the case?
What I would say, if there's a drastic change in intent, it's going to drum up some more questions, city-related, resident-related, and a lot of times they'll come back and say, what's your traffic management plan during greater events like that?
I didn't see any reference to football at all in that, and I think, my understanding is there's like 85 to 100 football players that I think practice in the fall that might compete with both soccer and the men's and women's soccer that could be there at the same time. I just think 115 spaces is very, very slim. Even from a practice standpoint, I think you add in the use of one or two fields without tying the coaches' hands to when they can actually use their spaces. I think that's a very low number with how this should be developed.
And the flexibility that we have is with the ag complex and the proximity of having that walkability and using that parking that's available there.
What is that walk time? Do you know? Did y'all look at that?
It's less than a quarter mile. I'd say maybe a 4-minute walk
4-minute walk?
from the ag complex.
Yeah.
It's shorter from the walk from their dorm to the existing classroom building. Sorry, Mr. O'Malley, the walk from ag is shorter than the walk from their dormitory to the classroom building right now. And in fact, we did look at the capacity and the usage. The classroom building is where their locker rooms are right now.
And that takes into account the existing location, which is somewhat suspect too, in respect to our neighbors that might have an issue with that and how we plan and the density of that space. So that takes into account where you're showing it now, correct?
Could you rephrase?
That takes into account, the 4-minute walk takes into account where you have the fields actually located now.
I can't speak to how long it would take a football player to walk from here to there.
You just did. You just, I believe it was 4-minute walk.
I did not tell you it was 4 minutes. I believe Ryan told you it was 4
okay.
minutes.
Well, Ryan,
But-
so does that take into account if the fields were to move with respect to our neighbors?
We'd have to look more into
Okay.
the exact walking distances, and because we're talking about to the parking lot, we're talking about parking
Yeah.
lot to parking lot,
Yeah.
so.
There's
we
a lot
can
of,
get into specifics
there's a
on
lot
that.
of stuff to still to study, it sounds like.
What I will say is that as we're talking about distances, quarter mile, very reasonable distance to be walking, and these are all within most of the ones that we're primarily using will be well within that quarter mile. As far as acceptance of taking that walk and being willing to do that walk, whether it's 4 minutes or 6 minutes, it's when the quarter mile is.
I don't want to get bogged down. One other question, you said you're going to recommend to the city that they not continue with their thoroughfare plan as it's shown with Sager Street. Do you know if there's any plans with TxDOT for Apple Drive to be at a grade separation at 290?
To my understanding, no, it'd be a right in, right out, to the best of my knowledge.
Any future plans for a grade separation there, do you know?
That would have a direct connect to 290 via a direct connector?
Correct. Apple Drive would intersect with
I'm not
290.
familiar with any plans.
If in the future TxDOT proposed to have a grade separation there, would that change your opinion of if that needs to be adopted in the city thoroughfare plan?
I think need to be a lot more discussions about growth projections and needs of that thoroughfare before I could speak that. I'm saying for the current plan and the current needs of this area, that is no longer there'll be connections to and from via driveways to the complex, and Apple would also provide access to the
That's fine. Thank you.
I think that's fairly speculative, Mr. O'Malley. We don't know any plans from TxDOT that tells us whether Appleway is going to be a connector. The only information we have is that the frontage road on 290 is going to be a northbound frontage road. If TxDOT were to provide us with additional plans, we would have to assess that.
I don't have any questions, right? I'll have some more in a minute.
Quick question. The parking lot seems to be a question. Is it possible, if we see that we need more parking in the future, that parking lot could be expandable to make it larger in the future?
Yes, sir. There are certainly plans that we could expand that parking lot. There are also other development options. We have a conceptual master plan that we'll also be showing you that accounts for additional parking and additional access. Certainly one of the unknowns as we're looking at existing conditions, we have student athletes, the softball teams, the soccer teams, who have to leave campus, drive across town to get to their current practice and competition facilities. With this, we're keeping them on campus. We're making it much more walkable for them. So somewhat of an unknown, how many of those students would be able to walk to this location? Certainly it's a shorter walk than if you live at Mill Creek Hall and you're going to go have breakfast at the Student Center. So it is a very walkable location for our students. You know, they're not going to be able to park right at the front door of the building. That would be wonderful if we could all do that, but it is a very walkable location for our students. Whether you live in the College Park Apartments, Mill Creek Hall, or you can park near Leroy Dreyer Field and walk through the various student walking paths to get over to this sports complex area. Any other questions? Otherwise, we'll move on and let the architect show us the design pictures. I'm sorry,
I
ma'am.
do have a question. From the standpoint of safety, do we need a second access point? Let's say you have to clear the area quickly or what have you. Do you want that access point through Appleway? Just from a safety aspect of it. And the other thought I have too is just looking forward, how far do we plan with these roadways? In other words, if Sager was extended, do we just go ahead and extend it now, and now we've got 2 entries or 3 entries to it? And if we do put some more buildings on for whatever reasons, and I don't know what they would be, a ag barn or another classroom building or whatever the need might be, do we plan for that now? Do we need a site plan that kind of have the sports complex here and then say, okay, this area here is developable in the future for buildings? That, because I want to make sure we don't short ourselves on, future expansion. Just a thought.
Yes, and we are looking at all of those things. We are looking at the secondary access. While the traffic impact analysis really shows us that this one point of access on Oak Tree Crossing would work, that we have ample parking in the area for when we would have events. We have ample parking for our day-to-day activities with the students driving there, speaking on the number of cars that students might take or students walking. We have looked at the emergency vehicle access. That was a topic that was brought up when we had our pre-development meeting with the city. We've also looked at that high-capacity game day event. Do we need a relief valve? Or in the future, do we want an access off of Appleway? And we're about to show you what we've planned for that. So our architects are about to present that, and we are looking at that secondary access. In regards to the Sager Street extension, that has been a topic with the city for decades. The city had a plan beginning in 1997 to do something with Sager Street, and to date, that has never come to fruition. Easements have been abandoned. Easements, I believe, have grandfathered out. Plans were looked at in that in that floodplain area. There was some difficulty there. So it has been something that's been looked at for many decades. So with that, yes, ma'am?
Mark, I had assumed and I thought that the Sager Street extension was completely abandoned by the city, but I guess that wasn't officially done in that respect. But would there be a possibility to possibly have access both ways and parking lots in both areas?
access both ways off of Sager.
Apple and
And
Oak
off of-
Tree.
In the master plan, yes, we're going to present you some concepts like that. Yes, ma'am.
Trustees,
Thank
if I
you.
can jump in here, all your questions are about to be answered in a couple slides coming up. So just hold on for us for a second, but let me just focus on Sager Street real quick, trustees. If you can back up a couple slides to the thoroughfare plan, I want to show you what's happened to Sager Street, just to point it out while we're talking about it here. And then we'll go on to the
Want the original thoroughfare
yeah,
plan?
the new one.
Oh, the
So,
new
okay,
one.
if you go back to the new one, all right, let me get to the podium. Trustees, if you look at the Sager Street extension, it used to come all the way down to Prairie Lee. It no longer does because the easements have been abandoned. If you look at the updated thoroughfare plan, this Sager Street comes and connects to Apple Way. We all know what's going to happen with 290 frontage road. It's northbound only. Sager Street has become a loop. It loops here, it comes to the frontage road, you can only go this way. So there is no access down this direction off of Sager Street anymore because it loops back to Apple Way and only goes north with the new frontage road of 290. So Sager Street is no longer a thoroughfare under the current plan all the way down your map. It loops back to what is going to be a one-way feeder road going the other direction. Just want to point that out in that thoroughfare plan.
But I would say that that would provide access from the EMS station, go up to the overpass, straight in. I guess when that becomes north-south, they would have to come that way, and we would keep them from coming all the way back up to Old Mill Creek and then down into the neighborhood to get there.
And you're about to see the thoroughfare plan we have through it that will fix
Okay.
all of that. Just want to point
Thank
that
you.
out for Sager Street, that that's no longer a full, complete process.
We also think that that could be a benefit, adding an access off of Sager. We're about to show that. We've got it in our plan. Not only would it benefit us, it would benefit the area for additional emergency access. So with that, I'm going to invite our architects from Pfluger, Mr. Chris Lammers, up to show you our plan, and even get a little bit into why we need to lay things out the way that we lay them out.
Thanks, Mark. Hey, y'all. I hope I can answer some of those questions. No pressure. But I appreciate y'all having us here and being able to talk. So is it just the down arrow? All right. So Mark talked a little bit about the program. I think most of you are familiar with it. This is just an overview of what are the key components. And if you can read that, your eyes are better than mine. But what are the big things, right? The field house, which will have locker rooms for all your, for numerous sports, a public entry area, intramural spaces, as well as sports venues, competition venues for softball and soccer, practice football fields, support spaces and storage, as well as a track around the football/intramural field. Oh, I already went through that. Sorry about that. I'm getting used to this. All right. I want to stop here and just chat a little bit about what we went through and what went into developing this plan. Okay, when we started, we looked at multiple options. We worked with a broad array of stakeholders within athletics and the campus just to look at many options. We did look at options off Sager. We looked at options off Apple. We looked at options off the one you've shown. And then we also look at what works best for the short term and long term at Blinn. And we also coordinated with Bartlett Cock, the CMAR, who provided some pricing information. And as Mark showed you the topos earlier, the site and the topography kind of informed this location. And what's developed is, in a big picture type of thing, which we're looking at is, what are the main drivers for this location? It's like, what are the best orientations of the fields? We'll get into that in a bit. We'll get into like what vehicular and pedestrian access and connection with the community and the campus. So we see the main access point, as was discussed earlier. And this, as you can see, will also create an access into the site, into the main entry. So you have a view as you're driving in that you also see the entry portal for the baseball, softball competition areas. And it promotes a good traffic flow. We have the enhanced detention area for site drainage. This is, again, as Mark alluded to, we're burying the power lines, but we're also creating a landscape buffer with trees and other landscaping between the neighborhood and our site. So that'll be a nice buffer there. The 115 parking space, which was talked about quite a bit earlier, and if I may, just a general comment about the way sports venues work. As a general rule, if you think about any other college campus you've been on, I mean, like when I worked on the Bright complex at A&M, right? 0 parking for students, 0. They all walked. It's just part of the general, the way things work. It's a 4-minute walk, and I'm just, you guys got to decide what's right for Blinn, but I can tell you a 4, 5, 10-minute walk is normal. It's actually better than probably most of your peers. This is one of the things we did, as Mark alluded to. We met with the city, and one of the things that they asked for, which we were happy to do because it has dual use for a lot of things, is for emergency vehicle access, which, as you know, is critical to hold competition sports of any kind. You have to have EMS access to the field as well as fire. So that is a connection to Apple. The field house is centrally located to all the venues. This is just an ideal way to create ownership and access for all the athletes to the field, as well as the fans and the public-facing part of the building, to be able to use that as a concourse, which we'll get into later. This is just the football track, which will have a large one earlier. There's a storage maintenance facility to serve the site. Of course, you see the competition soccer field. We'll talk more about it, but the orientation that we are showing is ideal for competition. As you're a little bit off due north, which is perfect. You can adjust that a little bit here and there, but that's ideal. And of course, the softball orientation is ideal for softball competition. You also get into what are the fans and what the view of the fans. And again, these orientations are great. I talked a little bit about vehicular access, but what we try to do is have a clear orientation or a clear difference between vehicles, pedestrians, and what have you. So it's fairly simple, straightforward car entry, access in and out. And then it shows, the red lines show the emergency vehicle access through the site. You see what we're doing around softball, because the fire trucks or the EMS would have to have access to that. That is a turnaround, but it's also has an amenity that can be used, by fans and for access. So it actually serves a dual use. From a pedestrian standpoint, we have some massing models that'll show this clear, but you see the red arrow that shows the connection to the parking lot at the ag area, but also you have a major pedestrian entry that will go through an entry portal and gateway, which we believe is a great branding opportunity, and that is right adjacent to the main entrance to the building. The red circle depicts kind of the concessions and public toilet area that is also on a concourse that faces your 2 competition venues, so that's kind of a nice element. And then the player access to the field house, you see how convenient it is to go to each venue. Football has its own access point, which was, because of the volume of players, was really important to be able to have them have direct access to the football practice field. And then the other sports have access out the other spot. A little more just blow up of the softball field. When you get into sports, collegiate sports design, one of the key things, I mean, there's several key things. You have player development, player performance, right? How do you make an efficient practice? They only have college kids have just so much time that they can devote to stuff. So you want to have as much of their time devoted to them getting better. And so we designed this field, as well as the other venues, to be very efficient. So you got storage, field storage adjacent to the softball field. The fields are synthetic turf, which is ideal. That was requested by athletics. Dugouts, bullpens. Oops, I want to go back to that. I had one other point. Also, the shaded fan area. And you'll see more in some of the other images, but you have the concourse connection, and above there where it says about 335 elevation point, that's your entry portal. So as you're walking through the main entryway, again, which we envision will have a lot of cool Blinn branding on it, it opens up and you see, you know, to your left will be the softball stadium, and to the right will be the soccer stadium. Similarly, softball, the soccer field's laid out, orientated. It's efficient it's to allow for efficient practices, very close to the field house, and also has the fans facing the proper direction. And they're shaded as well, so you don't want to look into the west sun usually. Football practice, intramural field, and as well as track. Again, it has its own storage area. They have a great deal of storage, field storage. So again, trying to make all that stuff as convenient as possible. The field house, just a little blow up of that. So on the lower right-hand corner is the public lobby entry. That is also where the entry portal into more of the fields is. So you kind of have a pretty cool public kind of entrance. And this lobby's envisioned as an area where you really promote Blinn. Whatever, it could be anything that you would want to have in there. It could be intramurals, athletics, or some other student organization. And we'll go through kind of some of the key components. Well, I want to go back there. I don't know if so there's also an intramural office and storage right off the main lobby, which is also very convenient. You have your golf area, which is your simulation is the big thing with them, right? Where they can go. There's the public area, the concessions that faces onto the concourse. So that bottom area there, that's a shaded concourse. That also faces the fans. There's the intramurals. You have softball, public toilets, as well as we're getting dual use out of those. There's a secure access that also serves the building. Soccer, and just to make a point here, and I'll go through, we'll just kind of breeze through just all the locker rooms, but one of the things in a multi-sport field house, what you want to try to do is give each team its own identity, right? So the vision is they have kind of a recess where they will have their own branding, their own ownership. The college athletes, they spend a ton of time in their locker rooms. That's why, much like what we did at Dryer with the baseball locker room, you create kind of a middle area that's a lounge, because they hang out there a lot. Some of them study there, they do a lot of things like that. So that's sort of the model that we're carrying through each of these teams' locker rooms. You have both soccer, and then you have the coaches' offices right next to that. Here's the team meeting rooms. And these are all about flexibility, right? They can meet, so they can handle, football's the most intensive because of its size, but it's also reconfigurable to serve other uses, other teams, as well as hospitality. We purposely have those facing the fields So they have a windows out into the concourse. Storage. Athletic teams need a lot of storage. Laundry, and there's a meeting room. And then football coaches, support space, cross-country, training. Again, we have 2 areas of training that are connected. So that's a real important component, and it's accessible for both sides. Here's the football locker room, and again, you see their primary access to the field. They just come out and go straight to the football field. And then we have visitor locker rooms. We're going to show you some aerial images of the site. Just to kind of give you a feel for the orientation. This is from, of course, looking back from the field side towards the concourse area, and it gives you kind of an understanding of what the view might be. Kind of the connection between the concourse and the venues. Gives you a little bit of an understanding of the access to that little entry area. Here's the other view. That shows the kind of these renderings, the design hasn't quite gotten there yet, but that sort of entryway off the parking lot, you see that's the pedestrian. We see that, that could be, sometimes we simply just put banners along there. You can put whatever you want. You don't have to put anything, but it's a great branding opportunity, and what it does is it gives the community and the fans, as they're coming up to your venue, it sort of enhances their experience. As they're walking through, they're kind of going through, it's sort of a pathway. Sometimes we even, like at Concordia, we even, in their kind of entry portal, we put little markers that had certain sayings that they wanted to say about their college. And so as you're walking, I'm not trying to tell you what to put there, I'm just saying that's the type of thing it can be. Aerial view of the front. This will be punched up a little bit, but it gives you kind of a context. One thing, this site, from a cost standpoint, an operational standpoint, location standpoint, is extremely efficient. That's one of the advantages you have of kind of starting and building these all at one time. So it's able to operate pretty efficiently from a construction standpoint. It's very efficient. When we've done similar projects, they've had a lot bigger footprint because you're not able, you're having to work around some things. So this works real well. This is a little more eye level of what that entry portal is beyond as you walk up. There's the concourse view with softball and soccer at the left. And another view of the concourse. Here's the entry portal. And again, this is, right now, it's just showing the massing of that. But that's going to be a pretty exciting space to walk through, in our opinion. It'll feel like part of campus, but it'll also be something to kind of just enhance the being on, whether you're a student or someone coming to watch a game, it'll just make an impact. Did I?
Why don't I run through this, Chris?
You want to run through this one?
Yeah, I'll run through the master plan aspect of it. I appreciate that. So in working with Pfluger and talking with, various administration and the athletics department and intramurals, we've just gathered information on future desires, future elements that could be developed for this site, and laid them out in a way that, we could expand on what we're doing on this sports complex. Really, it's going to be a park-like environment is what we had envisioned it. This is, a very inviting spot for our thousands of students that we have, for the athletics teams, for the intramurals, and even for residents. We can see across from Old Main, we have residents that walk the track daily. So I had mentioned we'd had a talk with the agricultural department about their long-term plans. Their long-term plans are to keep livestock, to keep farm animals at the Kelm Ranch and bring them in for semesters for instructional purposes. So to keep a select number of animals at the Ann Gardner Livestock Annex and then bring them out to the Kelm Ranch for their permanent home. For that, they said they needed a little bit more land up the hill behind them. It's roughly an acre, so we're outlining a little bit more land for Dr. Binky and the folks in the ag department. We're also allocating some space for maybe a future building on campus. There's been discussions that they might want a weight room here or additional training space, or certainly if we add more teams, say a track team or some other team, we might need to look at additional locker room space. So there is room for an additional building, as well as extending the concourse. If we were to go with a full track team, we have space available for the field events, for the throwing events, for the jumping events. We also have some open space available for additional intramurals. We've heard a possible comment about tennis or pickleball. Of course, there's potential parking in this area to support those or to support more functions here at the sports complex. Additional room here for some intramural fields, potentially a driving range area to help support the golf team, maybe a putting green that was identified in the master plan, a putting green, so maybe a putting chipping area for the golf team, as well as walking trails or running trails. This could be used for campus. I believe in the master plan phase 3, there were walking trails in this area tying into campus. It may also be used as a competitive trail for the cross-country team. The loop around this is about a mile. We could adjust that loop to get it closer to what the competitive needs for cross-country might need to be. And so with that, that brings us to scope, budget, and schedule. Clearly, we've talked a lot. There's a lot of things going on with this complex. It is not a simple project, and we've had to go through many rounds of conversations with our architects, designing and locating and redesigning and relocating to assess this project. We've had our construction manager look at it. We've had the architects, estimators look at it. And I want to give you an update of where we sit today. So in this new sports complex, we have the regulation size fields with synthetic turf for a football practice field. That will include practice level lighting. We have an 8-lane track, that's an all-weather track. We have a synthetic turf competition soccer field with its lighting and its stands and press box. We have the synthetic turf competition softball field with its lighting, stands, all the amenities you need for those competition fields. We also have the field house, which is approximately 28,000 square feet. You saw everything we have in there. We also have the 115 space parking lot, the 2,500 square foot unconditioned storage building, the new roadway connections and infrastructure for that. The project cost, based on the estimates from our construction manager and then verified with our architects estimating group, is the total project cost, current project budget is $39.5 million. So we have escalated in the cost, and I think in digging into that cost, as we look at it, the big delta that we see was the site work and the grading. That hill had much more of an impact on us than we had anticipated originally. The schedule is still within range of the FY25 through FY28. However, we may be slipping into the fall of FY28 as opposed to late summer and early fall. So with that, I will pause for any questions on the sports complex design, traffic impact analysis.
Can I go?
Yes, sir, you may.
Thank you. The connectivity to Apple Drive, how wide is that access?
It is 20 to 24 feet wide. We're still ironing that out. 20 feet is the minimum for emergency vehicle access. We are getting it up to 24 feet wide, and we're also making some bus parking for that. So it is a 2-lane drive.
Is it going to be controlled access, only for emergency vehicles?
We want to control access to the site because it is so remote. So we will most likely have gates similar to the way that we do at the ag complex. So there will be opportunity for us to open that for special events, but we will have a level of control there.
But it will be limited to vehicular or participant access over to Apple Road, is that correct?
Yes, yeah, we're not anticipating
But
turning
still-
this, we're not anticipating turning this over as a public road.
Okay, so, well, I'm just talking about at the time of an event is someone that is either participating in a sport or attending a sporting event, are they going to be able to use that to get out to Apple Road?
Yes, we will be controlling access so that at appropriate events, we can open that up so participants can come and go through that. It most likely wouldn't be open day to day, but when we know we have a heavily attended event, we would make that accessible.
I just have a couple more. The layout, I think the overall planning is good. I like everything that you're showing in there for us to eventually accomplish. I do think while there's efficiencies, Chris, I agree with the density. I do think that density presents some issues as well. So I question the density of how that's laid out. Also question that we need everything at one time. I would much rather see this project phased, and with being up to a $40 million project, I think phasing really kind of bears its head now. That might be something we should consider, is phasing the project. And then last is, I respect our neighbors in Timber Oaks very much, and it was kind of a bait and switch for them. You know, a lot of those folks made decisions to buy there with some of our previous planning, and now we're building a stadium in their backyard, literal backyard. I think we need to be more respectful of our neighbors and really look at other options off of Sager. So that's all I have.
Any other comments? Kettler?
Question on the undeveloped area, is that developable? In other words, is that complete floodplain? There's just a little corner in there, I think, Mark. And
Kind of in this bottom
lower-
right area.
Yes, sir.
That there could be, I would need to overlay this specifically with the floodplain. The floodplain does begin to loop through here. There is a level of developable land. We just haven't identified anything to put there just yet.
And then ag just wants 1 acre extra, is that what I understood?
We
or
had Mr. Schubert and I both had a conversation with Dean Vavra and Dr. Benke.
Okay.
And through our discussions, that was the extent of their need at the ag complex for their long-term planning.
Okay. The other thing is I do want to be neighborly, and whatever we could do to help the neighbors is appreciated, and it's a wonderful plan. I'm just not sure, really, many times the fields and so forth do work in floodplains, but I think what you're explaining is the elevation and so forth, and the outlay is perfect for this. So it's a tough situation, I think.
Certainly, and I think scale also plays a factor here. Similar to
Yeah.
the scale we were outlining for the Waller campus, our competition fields are the nearest competition field, and I may pull up another slide shortly. The soccer field is 600 feet, roughly 600 feet away from the backyard fence. So that is the field that would have the higher density lighting. That is the field that would have the speakers. The speakers in this event, the PA system, would be pointing away. And so mitigation factors that help both lighting and sound are distance, any obstructions like the building, as well as landscaping. And we are looking at putting some dense vegetation, maybe some evergreen trees, some dense bushes, all to help mitigate the lighting and sound. And again, we're trying to keep the competition areas as far away in this layout as we can from the residents. The non-competition area, the football field and intramural field, we will not have a PA system there. The lighting levels are lower. And also when you're dealing with modern LED sports lighting, this isn't the lighting you see at Dreyer Field or the lighting you see at Holt Park. These LED lights are laser focused. They have shrouds and shields to cut down on the glare. And while the city of Brenham does not have a light trespass ordinance, we do want to be good neighbors. The general rule of thumb is to try and keep light trespass below 10 lux or 1 foot candle, and I know that's kind of detailed. But we will be trying to work on minimizing that, and I feel that we will be successful based on light placement in the direction that we put that. These modern lights will have dimming capabilities. They will have automatic timer control, so we shouldn't have to worry about students turning them on for an intramural event and them staying on all night. And clearly there's a lot of lighting in that area already as well, with the 2 car dealerships that are 40, 50 feet up on the hill, and the glare that potentially comes from that. So we hope to be better than that. We hope to have protected lighting, and we hope that our sound, as we design it, would not do that. In fact, I visited Holt Park for a game last week, and I took some lighting levels and some sound levels. Now, clearly, Holt Park is not going to be what we're building here. Their speaker system was less, the lighting is older, but it gave me a benchmark that we can shoot for, and we can better that as part of our design.
Chairwoman, I have several things. One
Go
is
right
I want
ahead.
to thank Mark for a wonderful presentation with the team that he brought. Second thing is that I want to commend our athletic director, and I think this is far overdue. When you look at the programs we're talking about, particularly women's sports, I want to throw out a few quick statistics. Just this past fall, 12 of our 15 sports programs were All-American. So we're not just talking about athletes. We're not just talking about student athletes. We're talking about scholar athletes. 54 of those students were first All-Americans. Our women's golf team had a 3.47 GPA. Our women's softball team had a 3.4 GPA, team GPA. Our women's soccer had a 3.66, and I can keep going there. But my concern is that if we have excellence as one of our core values on the back on the wall, and we're talking about how we really care for our students. I was at a soccer game Sunday morning at Holt Park, and what I saw was very disturbing. Very disturbing. I would never want to have to answer to a parent about what I saw there. So we invested $10 million in just renovating Leroy Drive, and the return on that investment was a national championship within 2 years. These kids are not just here to play sports. They represent spirituality, service, they represent scholar, and then sports. And again, when we talk about Title IX issues, when we talk about some other issues, I think we're past due. The $40 million may scare some people. We spend $10 million on renovations. So are we saying our girls are less important than our boys? Are women less important than our men? So there are people way smarter than I am that can figure out, the elevations and the drainage and all that kind of stuff. But right now I'm just talking about caring for students and caring for the students that many times are the face of our university, our college. So last brief comment, we had a lot of dialogue about COVID and the impact that COVID had on this generation of children and them not being able to come outside. We know that sports helps develop character, it helps develop leadership skills, and if we're going to come out of this mental health challenge, we need to really honor our scholar athletes the way they need to be honored. So I don't necessarily see this as spending money, as I always say, I see this as invested money. They're probably going to be naming rights opportunities. Our teams have been great with that as well. But when I look at the facilities that our football teams have to practice on, the conditions that our men and women soccer teams have to play under, it makes me weep. So I'm wholehearted for whatever we need to do to be able to make this right. So those are my comments.
I do have a question in regards to cost. The initial projection of 29 million, I'm just curious on, the dirt work. How much of that project that 29 was dirt work in that project versus the building? And how much is it in the new estimate to the building?
That's hard to assess because when I put the budget together, it wasn't detailed. I mean, we didn't know where this was going to go. So it was more conversations with our industry partners. How much did it cost for you to build this? How difficult a project was it? And we got good rough numbers that when you looked at the site, when you're on the site, you look at it, it seems like it's flat enough because it's 50 acres. I don't have a direct correlation between my industry partners letting me know that a field costs this much and a building costs this much per square foot to the detailed numbers that the architects and the engineers are giving me now. Because they're kind of lumped in with other things. They're lumped in with the fields, they're lumped in with the building, they're lumped in with the site work. But whenever I start looking at the cost of the building aligns, we had the architects and the contractors break things out. The building cost that I estimated per square foot, or that we estimated as a forecast per square foot, it is closely aligning with the cost in the project. The fields are fairly close. The fields are a little bit more expensive than we had originally projected. The big delta is the site work and the parking and the development of the site. That is the biggest delta that we have between this, and it's millions of dollars. It's $7-8 million difference. So there was just much more site work, and whenever I've talked with the architects, when I've talked with the contractors, that is what they're seeing. The site work is the big delta.
There's a big difference. I think it looks beautiful. I see one of the things that, as we sit in this seat, we worry about in 20 years when we're not sitting here, are they going to look back and say they weren't forward-thinking enough and they didn't do what we needed? That's a big concern. Bigger than that is money. Money is always a concern. So I'm very appreciative of everything that's been done here. I think I want a bigger parking lot. I think I want more parking. I'm worried that when that parking lot is full, the things that were expressed to us earlier, people are going to want to park along the street. And we definitely don't want that for our neighbors. So I don't know. That's the really big concern I have there. But overall, I think it's a beautiful plan. It's well thought out. I see lots of opportunity for expansion and just a lot of effort, and I appreciate all that's gone into it. Are there any other comments or?
What phase are you at? Are you in design development already, or what phase are you in?
We're kind of paused at the end of schematic design. Clearly, we were looking to have a presentation with the board. We did have some soil borings done. We're trying to firm up exactly what the soil conditions are out there. We do know some areas where previously I think there was a spoil site on a previous project years ago. So we are kind of in that zone between the SD and the DD. We still need to clean up a little bit on the SD to have some more formal renderings. But
When were you going to get a price, somewhere between SD and DDs? Are you ready to bring us a number?
The
CMAR number?
The guaranteed maximum price?
GMP number?
No, we're not ready for a guaranteed maximum
Are you
price.
going to do that after DD?
I believe they're projecting at about 50% CDs.
And CDs, you're going to do that?
Yeah, we were looking DD into early CDs, and we were just talking with the architects the other day. Mr. Lack, I believe, was that? Yes, we were looking at 50% CDs? Correct. Yes. And that would be, and we're going to show that on the presentation later, kind of in the funding schedule. The GMP for the Waller project is still on track for December. We're probably looking at January, maybe February for the GMP for the sports complex.
So being at schematic design, there's still opportunity to move some things around and keep us on schedule?
Well, no, if we start moving things, we will not stay on schedule.
Okay,
We will be delayed.
all right. I mean, I think there's a lot still to consider before we'll sign off on it.
One other thing that I wanted to mention that I'm very thankful for, you spoke about the LED lighting with more pattern in where you needed it to be, and also landscaping to help mitigate. I think those factors are important. I'm guessing you're wanting to show us something on lighting?
Yes, I have some extra slides for lighting.
I would love to see that. Thank you.
So to give you a feel for lighting, you know, the upper left-hand corner, that's our football field. We would have 4 lights. This is practice level lighting, which is lower than competition level. That's 20 to 30 foot candles. Again, these would be LED lights, so you can control the beams. They have shields on them to reduce the glare. We're 220 feet away from the back property line. And we're also looking at putting a row of trees. Where did my cursor go? A row of trees and vegetation here that would also grow up, help to screen the lighting. And so we'll do some calculations to reduce any lighting. And again, we're not going to have a sound system over here, you know, maybe a coach blowing a whistle during practice, but distance is a mitigation factor for sound, as well as that dense vegetation that we're going to put there. That's going to help to mitigate the sound. Sound is something that in the city of Brenham does have an ordinance. For our zoning, which is a mixed use, we're allowed sound at 62 decibels. However, there is an exemption for school events and athletic events, but we want to be good neighbors. I want to try and meet that 62 decibel mitigation level. And from hearing a soccer event going on at Holt Park and taking readings, 220 feet from the end zone of a field, I was getting readings of under 50 decibels at Holt Park in that general area. Again, we won't have speakers at the football stadium or at the football complex here, the football field. So I would envision that sound won't be an issue and our lighting should not be an issue. We'll work with that. When you get to the competition fields, this lighting level will be higher. For competition, you want 50 to 70 foot candles, but we're much further away. We're 570 feet away from the back property line. We're shielded by a building, and our speakers will be pointing parallel and away from the residential area. So I feel that our mitigation factors there should be ample. And again, whenever I was at Holt Park, if I was on the other side of a building measuring the sound levels, it was under 50 decibels. And per the city's ordinance, 50 decibels is the allowable level for nighttime hours in a residential community. So I feel that from both sound and lighting mitigation, we should have a good plan to help with the residents. And then clearly the softball is very far away, and if we're taking care of those issues on the other 2 fields, we should be very good on the softball complex. So just some concepts. Clearly that's not our field in the lower right, but you can see what modern LED lighting does, how it's controlled, and it generally stays in the field of play. And more often than not, the concern with lighting isn't necessarily the light spill, but it's the glare. I'm actually seeing the light and it's kind of getting in my eyes, it's blinding me. If you go to a big parking lot at night, or even if you're in the community and you look up the hill at the car dealerships, the lights from the car dealerships are kind of pointing in your eyes and giving you glare. The modern LED lights come with shields and they direct that light down. You really don't see the glare from the lights.
Madam Chairwoman. So we've gone from 29 to 39. Do we anticipate any other escalation in cost? And before that, I want to go back to, we had a generous 183-acre donation by Eunice Kelm several years ago with the design for ag to use that facility. Part of what I'm hearing from you is that with the listening parties with the ag department is that property is actually where a lot of the livestock development is going to be done, which is reduced the amount of space that they may necessarily need for expansion.
Yes, sir. That's my understanding is that. The Kelm Ranch would be very difficult to develop for instructional purposes, to build a classroom there or have classes there, but they would intend to keep the livestock there, make that the permanent home, and they would not need to keep those herds of livestock on the Brenham campus. They would be kept remotely at the Kelm Ranch and then just brought in maybe 10 to 15 head of cattle or some hogs or some sheep and goats into the Ann Gardner Livestock Annex, used for instructional purposes for a semester, and then brought back out to the Kelm Ranch. And there's been some discussions about the number, and there are certain guidelines that they have to follow within federal rules. Certainly the city has some rules that we need to follow on livestock and city limits, but they do not need acres and acres for their need. Could you remind me of your first question?
That from 29 to 39, when are we going
Yes.
to get to a level where this is where we are, we can't go any further?
So as far as the contractors and the architects building in some contingency and looking at escalation, they have done that. Similar to what I mentioned with the Waller project, what nobody can estimate are those geopolitical things. Tariffs coming involved or anything going on there. But as far as building an escalation allowance into that number, that is in there. And I think at the level we're at, they build in a little bit into their estimates to allow us to get in and tweak the portal, to allow us to get in and what kind of carpet do you want or what kind of brick do you want. So they're allocating for that. Certainly if we want to double the size of the parking lot, we may have to get them to give us an updated number on what the cost of more parking would be.
Anyone else with thoughts or concerns or questions?
I would just say thank you for the presentation. You've obviously done a lot of work on this. Of course, just like the rest of the board, I do feel like we're all concerned about the extra cost that it appears to be needed to complete the project. But I know we are having a capital financing session after this, so I'm curious to see capital funding. We'll see how that's going to work out. So, thank you.
Thank you. And speaking of that, would you like us to have a short break, or would you like to continue on? Do you want a break before the financial outlook, or would you like to?
Keep going.
Keep going? Keep going. Okay. Then we are ready for the presentation of an update on the financial outlook. Dr. Burton.
Thank you, ma'am. Right now, looking at our cash, we have $25 million available for two new projects, and then roughly $6 million has been encumbered in the yellow for these projects. So that gives us 31. We anticipate, and keep in mind, this is in a cash basis, that we will have in the 40 millions come the September September 1st. Looking at the model for the cash projections, you can see that we have the list of the projects that we have. We've got 30 million that was targeted for the Bryan, 21 million for the land purchase up in Waller, over in Waller. We have the central plant, which we've budgeted 6.9 million. And then the Waller building we have at 68 million and 39 million. Looking at what we've spent basically year to date, the Bryan building, we have, we pushed in 8.2 million to complete that. We purchased the land at 21.6 million and completed that. With the chiller that we've, project going on, we've got 1.7 million that we've already spent towards that. With the Waller building, encumbering, we have 2.3 million, and with the Brenham Sports Complex, we've encumbered $1 million. So that gives us 34 million that we've set aside that we anticipate using cash for in 2025. And so then if you add the 10 million that we anticipate adding to the cash for this fiscal year, at next month's board meeting, you should see somewhere around $40 million in cash. Okay, going to 2026, that's when construction really picks up. And so with the Waller building, we're anticipating about half of it being spent, about 30 million. And then the Brenham Sports Complex, about half of that. So we will need to then, when you throw in the money that we've saved from operations,
we will need to add a bond of $55 million. So then that gets us enough cash to finish the 2027 fiscal year constructions projects. And then at that time, we also start paying on the bond. So our cash reserves go down to 12.7 million, I'm sorry. And then subsequently, we close out the projects in 2028, and we start paying on our bond again, and we start adding back to our fund balance for R&Rs. So that gets us to about 8.1 million. This will be the low point of the project. I apologize, I could have had red arrows falling through here, but as I was discussing this, but just to show you that this is how the project is set up, and that we anticipate 40 million for the beginning of the project, and then subsequently where we need to get the 55 million to sell the bond, and then that gives us 56 million to finish up the projects in 2027, and gets us to 12 million, and then gets us to the low of 8.1 million. But then subsequently, we start building back up to our fund balance. Any comments?
Can I start now?
Please.
How are we going to be able to have a net increase of cash from operations in fiscal years 26, 27, 28, and 29, being that our tuition and state appropriations are frozen?
Well, Trustee O'Malley, historically, where Blinn gets their savings from is 2 points. It's on the, we've had surprise revenues, or our revenues have been positive over the, compared to budget. But then there's two things that Blinn does. One, Blinn does not anticipate any savings from salaries, and that ends up coming in. We don't know what to budget with, what savings to budget for salaries, so we end up budgeting 100% of salaries. Subsequently, that's been coming in at about 6 million. So between those two items, that's how we've been able to add to our cash balance every year.
Okay, with that said, this last year, we gave everyone a 3% raise, and we justified that with your, quote, surprised savings and your surprised income from, from the state, and the traditional savings that we have on not filling all the positions each year. So so if we continue to give a 3% raise, I don't understand, and our revenue is capped, I can't do the math to put in the bank $10 million each year.
Well, again,
without another answer that you haven't given yet.
Okay. Well, historically, we have run across this, and the administration here is very conservative in their budgeting. And Dr. Hensley is looking ahead to next year, as she has looked at in the past 10 years and leading us through these budget process. And so we have yet to send forward, under Dr. Hensley's guidance administration, an unbalanced budget. And every budget that we've sent forward has had ample cash and added to the bottom line.
The answer I was looking for is enrollment.
Okay.
Enrollment increases.
But we're not making that assumption at all in our...
But you're not making the assumption to increase enrollment, but you are making the assumption to maintain a $10 million net profit each year, right, knowing our expenses are going up with no tuition increases and no additional state appropriations. So you're assuming all the good stuff, but you're not assuming the bad stuff. So to me, that doesn't add up.
Well, we're not assuming any enrollment increases. We're not assuming... and if I can just give you the list of assumptions that I've used.
Let me go back to one other, I can probably button mine up real quick. We're talking about adding another $55 million to our debt. Our existing debt is $100 million, correct?
Right there, yes, sir.
And we're talking about adding another 50, so we'll be at $155 million in debt, this college will be. In a worst-case scenario, who's liable and responsible for that debt?
The college is.
Okay, and who's responsible for the college? Is it the taxpayers of Washington County? Are they ultimately responsible?
Whatever, keep in mind, we have $45 million in reserves.
Okay.
So, and it's looking like our payments on this bond would be about $3.7 million, on this existing bond. So we would have to find in our budget to make the payments.
Okay, thank you.
All right. And just going through the assumptions that were done in creating this, is conservative assumptions. We will maintain the $42.5 million. That will not be touched. We currently have an investment-grade bond rating. S&P is looking at us, asking the same questions that you were asking, and have felt that we are worthy risk at a high rate. Bond payments never exceed 8.5%, and that's only for a short period of our existing budget. Once in 2030, I believe, we pay off a bond, and so then our payments would go below the 8.5. And that's only, again, for a few period. We're assuming no tuition increase, no state funding increase, no enrollment increase. Any increases in tuition, state appropriation, or enrollment is extra. Any increases in any other type of revenue, such as interest, is considered extra. We'll maintain a margin of safety in our cash balance. That's one of the assumptions we're working on. Deferred maintenance is funded for most of these projects. Debt service is included in our projections. The project that we're putting in is revenue generating in Waller. We're able to utilize our $21 million investment that we've already placed in Waller, plus our 100 acres. And then lastly, we start to address construction cost increases with our plan. So this is how this model was put together. This is the assumptions we made. All right, moving on to the next one is our schedule. There are three main points of the schedule, and this is where Stephen Adams comes in. Between October and November, Stephen Adams will come here and discuss the process of the bond issuance, is what we need to do. He is our consultant on finance. In December 25, the board will consider and adopt a reimbursement resolution. What that means is that we can use bond funds to reimburse us for expenses that we've incurred related to this project. At that point, we're also anticipating receiving a guaranteed maximum price for the Blinn Waller campus. And then we'll also receive the audit, which Stephen Adams is saying is important in getting our bond rating. In January, we're hoping to receive, January-February timeframe, hoping to receive the GMP for the Blinn Brenham campus complex. We'll receive a financing update from Stephen Adams' group. And then the board will consider and adopt parameters of resolution okaying us to go out to sell bonds with three factors: the interest rate, the amount of cash we can borrow, and the term of the loan bonds that we can borrow. So that's what you can expect coming forward. Any additional?
So, Dr. Burton, none of our minimum 6 months reserves will be touched in this process.
According to our model, yes, sir. No, we have made that assumption that that $42.5 million will not be touched.
Thank you.
Trustee Kettler?
Clint, also, the expenses for Waller for the instructors and the maintenance and all those things, those have all been included in the budget, correct?
Yes, ma'am. That is part of rolling forward. The assumption is that we will have a balanced budget going forward. We'll not have a deficit budget.
Okay, and that will still leave us with what we think is about $10 million a year.
Yes, ma'am.
To add to our fund balance.
Right, cash basis, yes, ma'am. So with cash.
Dr. Hensley, do you have anything that you'd like to enlighten us or add to that?
Thank you, trustees, for your very thoughtful attention to the discussion this morning. I think it was very important that you hear where we are at this point in time. Clearly, we have an escalation on the sports complex of approximately $10 million. I'd like to thank staff, first and foremost. You can tell, I hope, by the reflection of their detailed presentation this morning that we have spent a tremendous amount of time on these two projects. I think it would be important for the board to hear from Stephen Adam regarding how the money will flow and how much payment we will make. Right now, it's approximately $3.6 million, I believe, that we would have as an added expense starting in about FY28 or so. We are and have consistently dropped approximately $10 million or more in savings every year to the bottom line. I think basically you want to know, is this affordable? Is this doable? Does this put us as a board in a real pinch? Can we continue to offer salaries? Can we continue to do deferred maintenance? Can we still anticipate for unexpected surprises that may come along? I have asked these questions repeatedly to everyone within the college and all of our consultants, and I continually to get a yes on response to all of those questions. This is doable. It's thoughtful. It is conservative. We have the best experts that we can hire to give us the best guidance that we know of. So I think that I would still say, from my perspective, I'm speaking as your chancellor solely, that I would move forward with both of these projects. Ultimately, the recommendation would come to the board for action. You will get a guaranteed maximum price in December for the Waller campus, approximately January, February on the sports complex. Going forward from today, and we welcome the discussion and any follow-up questions or conversations you would like to have. But going forward, we'll follow the timeline unless otherwise directed that Glenn just outlined for you, and I feel comfortable in doing so. Thank you.
Thank you for your comments, Dr. Hensley. Is there anyone else who would like to address the workshop? All right, thank you, Dr. Burton. I know that we have no executive session for today. That is correct. And we would move to adjourn. Can I have a motion, please?
So moved.
Second.
It has been moved and seconded that we adjourn the board workshop. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Motion carries. I didn't hear a no at all. So motion carries. We are adjourned at 12:28 p.m. Thank you.